Imagine a warship born of national pride, desperate ambition, and incredible secrecy. A steel behemoth so vast, so heavily armed, it remains the largest, most powerful battleship ever to sail the seas. This is the story of the Yamato, the ultimate expression of Japanese naval might in World War II, a vessel designed to dominate oceans and intimidate foes. Yet, her tale is not one of glorious victories, but of immense potential largely unrealized. A sheltered existence, punctuated by brief, brutal moments of combat, culminating in a final, tragic voyage against overwhelming odds. She was a titan conceived for a type of war that was already fading, a magnificent dinosaur facing the dawn of a new age dominated by air power. So, what exactly was the Yamato, and why did this floating fortress, armed with guns of unprecedented size, meet such a catastrophic end? The origins of the Yamato class lie in the turbulent years following World War I and the naval arms limitations imposed by treaties. Japan, feeling constrained by the Washington and London naval treaties, which locked them into a smaller fleet size compared to the United States and Great Britain, sought a way to achieve qualitative superiority over potential adversaries, particularly the United States Navy's Pacific Fleet. If they couldn't have quantity, they would focus on unmatched quality, building individual ships so powerful they could theoretically engage and defeat multiple enemy counterparts simultaneously. This doctrine led Japanese naval architects down a path of designing warships that pushed the boundaries of engineering and size. The belief was that a fleet centered around such super battleships could decisively win the single, climactic fleet engagement that Japanese naval strategy envisioned. Development began in the mid-1930s, shrouded in perhaps the most intense secrecy ever applied to a warship construction program. Japan had withdrawn from the naval treaties, freeing its designers from restrictions, but they knew that revealing the true scale of their ambition would provoke an arms race they couldn't win. The plans for these new battleships, initially designated as Design A-140, were classified top secret. Chief designer Captain Kikuo Fujimoto initially oversaw the project, later succeeded by Vice Admiral Keiji Fukuda and Captain Kantaro Koyama, who refined the designs. Numerous proposals were considered, juggling speed, armor, and armament, but the consensus settled on immense firepower and protection. The requirement was simple, yet staggering. Create a battleship capable of outgunning any existing or planned American battleship. The heart of this requirement lay in the main armament. The designers settled on 9 massive 18.1-inch or 460mm naval guns. These Type 94 guns were the largest caliber weapons ever mounted on a warship, capable of hurling armor-piercing shells weighing over 3,200 pounds across distances exceeding 25 miles. Each gun barrel alone weighed about 160 tons, and the triple turrets housing them were immense structures, each heavier than a typical destroyer of the era. The sheer scale of these weapons dictated the size of the ship needed to carry them. To protect this offensive power, Yamato was given incredibly thick armor plating. The main armored belt along the waterline was 16 inches thick, sloped outwards at 20 degrees to increase its effective thickness against incoming shells. Deck armor was also substantial, designed to withstand plunging fire and aerial bombs, reaching up to 9 inches in critical areas. The main gun turrets featured frontal armor plating nearly 26 inches thick, essentially impervious to any naval gun afloat at the time. The design incorporated advanced features like a bulbous bow to reduce water resistance and improve speed and fuel efficiency, and a complex internal subdivision intended to contain flooding. Power came from 12 Campon boilers driving 4 steam turbines, generating 150,000 shaft horsepower for a respectable top speed of around 27 knots, or about 31 miles per hour. Fast for such a colossal vessel. All this firepower and protection resulted in a ship of unprecedented dimensions. When fully loaded, Yamato displaced nearly 72,000 tons. She measured 862 feet long, with a beam of 121 feet. Her sheer size presented enormous construction challenges. A special graving dock at the Kura Naval Arsenal had to be deepened, and gantry cranes capable of lifting the immense weights involved were required. The secrecy surrounding the construction was legendary. The Kura Naval Arsenal became a fortress within a fortress. The graving dock was shielded from view by enormous fences and strategically placed warehouses. Later, a massive canopy made of hemp rope, weighing hundreds of tons, was erected over the entire length of the ship to hide it from aerial reconnaissance and even observers on nearby hills. Workers were sworn to absolute secrecy, their movements restricted, and counterintelligence measures were constantly employed. Disinformation campaigns spread rumors of smaller, treaty-compliant designs. The goal was to keep the true nature of Yamato and her sister ship, Musashi, built concurrently at Nagasaki, hidden from the world, especially the United States, for as long as possible. It was a remarkable success. The true specifications of the Yamato class were not fully known by the Allies until after the war began. Yamato was laid down in November 1937 and launched in August 1940. Fitting out continued under the veil of secrecy, and she was formally commissioned into the Imperial Japanese Navy on December 16, 1941. The timing was deeply ironic, just 9 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, an event orchestrated by naval aircraft, the very weapon system that would ultimately seal Yamato's fate and render the concept of the super battleship increasingly obsolete. Despite being the most powerful warship afloat, Yamato's early service career was surprisingly uneventful, bordering on sedentary. She became the flagship of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of the Combined Fleet, in February 1942. During the pivotal Battle of Midway in June 1942, Yamato served as Yamamoto's command post but sailed hundreds of miles behind the main carrier striking force. She was too far away to participate in the surface action or even use her anti-aircraft guns effectively when the Japanese carriers were attacked and sunk. This pattern continued. While fierce fighting raged across the Pacific, Yamato often remained anchored at major naval bases like Truk Lagoon or Hashirajima in Japan. This led to the crew developing a cynical nickname for their mighty ship, the Hotel Yamato, a luxurious but strategically irrelevant accommodation. She participated in some troop transport duties and minor deployments, but saw no direct combat against enemy surface ships. There were various reasons for this cautious approach. The immense fuel consumption of the Yamato class, the desire to preserve these capital assets for that decisive fleet battle that never quite materialized in the way Japan envisioned, and perhaps a growing, unspoken awareness within parts of the IJN High Command that risking these symbols of national power against American carrier aircraft was increasingly dangerous. Her sister ship, Musashi, shared a similar early fate, operating primarily in rear areas. The intended class of 5 ships was cut down due to shifting wartime priorities and resource limitations. The third hull, Shinano, was converted during construction into an aircraft carrier, while the fourth was canceled altogether. The resources poured into these two giants could arguably have been better spent on more aircraft carriers, destroyers, or aircraft, the tools proving decisive in the Pacific War. Yamato finally fired her main guns in anger during the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944, arguably the largest naval battle in history. As part of Admiral Takeo Kurida's powerful center force, Yamato and Musashi steamed towards the Philippines, aiming to disrupt the American landings on Leyte. The journey through the Sibuyan Sea on October 24th was harrowing. Intense air attacks from U.S. Navy carrier planes focused on the center force. Musashi bore the brunt of these attacks, absorbing an estimated 19 torpedo and 17 bomb hits, before finally capsizing and sinking with enormous loss of life. Yamato also suffered bomb damage but pressed on. Early on, October 25th, Kurida's force, having passed through the San Bernardino Strait undetected during the night, stumbled upon a completely unexpected American force off the coast of Samar. Task Unit 77.4.3, codenamed Taffy 3. This was a small group of slow escort carriers, destroyers, and destroyer escorts, designed for ground support and anti-submarine warfare. Not a fleet engagement with super battleships. What followed was one of the most desperate and heroic naval actions of the war. Yamato, at the head of the Japanese line, opened fire with her massive 18.1-inch guns at extreme range, targeting the fleeing American carriers. Eyewitness accounts, both Japanese and American, describe the awe-inspiring sight of Yamato firing, with huge splashes from her shells erupting near the American ships, some colored by dye markers. However, her fire control was hampered by the confusion of the battle. Smoke screens laid by the American destroyers, and continuous harassment from aircraft launched by the beleaguered escort carriers. While Yamato fired 104 rounds from her main battery, historians debate her effectiveness. Some accounts suggest she may have contributed to the sinking of the escort carrier Gambier Bay or scored hits on destroyers, while others maintain her fire was largely inaccurate at the ranges involved and under the chaotic conditions. She definitely straddled several ships, causing panic and near misses. During the engagement, Yamato herself was forced to turn away sharply to avoid torpedoes launched by the suicidally brave American destroyers like the USS Johnston, Herman, and Hull, which charged headlong into the vastly superior Japanese force. Despite having overwhelming superiority, Admiral Kurita, possibly confused about the forces opposing him, worried about further air attacks, and having received conflicting reports, controversially ordered his fleet to break off the attack and withdraw, letting the vulnerable American landing forces off the hook. Yamato, having finally seen major action, retreated back through the San Bernardino Strait, surviving further air attacks on the way home. Leyte Gulf proved that even the mighty Yamato was vulnerable and that the era of battleship supremacy was truly over. The sinking of her sister Musashi, solely by air power, was a stark warning. By the spring of 1945, Japan's situation was desperate. American forces had captured Iwo Jima and were now invading Okinawa, the gateway to the Japanese home islands. Fuel was scarce, experienced pilots and aircraft were few, and the Imperial Navy was a shadow of its former self. In a final, symbolic, and ultimately suicidal gesture, the remnants of the Japanese fleet were ordered to sortie in Operation Tengo. Yamato, accompanied by the light cruiser Yahagi and 8 destroyers, was tasked with sailing to Okinawa, beaching herself on the coast and fighting as a fixed shore battery until destroyed. She was given only enough fuel for a one-way trip. Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito, commanding the force from Yamato, knew it was a suicide mission, a final act of defiance reflecting the samurai spirit of fighting to the death. Yamato and her small escort departed Tokuyama on the afternoon of April 6, 1945. They were quickly spotted by American submarines and reconnaissance aircraft. U.S. Navy Task Force 58, fielding numerous fleet carriers, prepared a massive aerial reception. On the morning of April 7th, as the Japanese force sailed south of Kyushu, the attacks began. Wave after wave of American aircraft, Hellcat fighters, Helldiver dive bombers, and Avenger torpedo bombers descended upon the small flotilla. The sky filled with anti-aircraft fire from Yamato and her escorts, but they were hopelessly outnumbered and outmatched. Yamato bristled with anti-aircraft guns, but many were open mounts, vulnerable to strafing, and the sheer volume of attackers overwhelmed the defenders. The American pilots, veterans of many campaigns, pressed their attacks with skill and determination, coordinating dive-bombing runs with torpedo attacks from multiple directions to split the ship's defenses and inflict maximum damage. Yamato maneuvered desperately, but she was too large, too conspicuous a target. Torpedoes struck her port side early on, causing flooding and a list. Dive bombers scored hits on her superstructure, bridge, and secondary batteries, starting fires and disabling anti-aircraft mounts. Despite damage control efforts, including counter-flooding compartments on the starboard side to correct the list, the damage accumulated relentlessly. More torpedo hits followed, primarily on the port side again, increasing the list beyond the point of correction. Steering control was lost. Orders were given to prepare to abandon ship. Shortly after 2 p.m., Yamato was listing heavily to port, almost capsizing. Then, a catastrophic explosion ripped the ship apart. It's believed that fires ignited by bomb hits reached one of the main 18.1-inch gun magazines, setting off thousands of tons of ordnance in a titanic blast. The resulting mushroom cloud rose thousands of feet into the air and was reportedly seen from mainland Japan, over 100 miles away. Yamato broke in two and sank rapidly, taking Vice Admiral Ito and the vast majority of her crew. Estimates range from 2,700 to over 3,000 men with her. Only 280 sailors and officers were rescued from the swirling vortex left where the world's largest battleship had been moments before. The light cruiser Yahagi and 4 of the destroyers were also sunk in the onslaught. Operation Tengo ended in utter disaster, achieving nothing strategically but costing thousands of lives. The sinking of the Yamato was the final, undeniable proof that the aircraft carrier had eclipsed the battleship as the dominant capital ship in naval warfare. Her immense size, powerful guns, and thick armor counted for little against swarms of aircraft delivering bombs and torpedoes with precision. She was an engineering marvel, a testament to Japan's industrial capabilities and design prowess, but she was conceived for a conflict that technology had already moved beyond. Was the Yamato a waste of precious resources? From a purely strategic and cost-benefit perspective during World War II, the answer is almost certainly yes. The steel, labor, and industrial capacity poured into Yamato and Musashi could have produced more aircraft carriers, hundreds of aircraft, or numerous smaller, more versatile warships that might have served Japan's war effort more effectively. Her combat record is sparse compared to her reputation. She spent most of the war in port, missed key battles, and her contribution at Leyte Gulf remains debated. Her final mission was a tragic sacrifice devoid of military value. Yet, the Yamato holds a powerful place in history and popular culture, particularly in Japan. She represents the pinnacle of battleship design, a symbol of national ambition and technological achievement, however ill-fated. Her sheer scale continues to fascinate naval enthusiasts and historians. The Yamato Museum in Kure, where she was built, attracts countless visitors, preserving her memory and telling her story. She is a reminder of the immense power humans can create, but also of the hubris and strategic miscalculations that can lead such creations to ruin. The Yamato wasn't just steel and guns, she was an embodiment of an empire's hopes, and her sinking mirrored that empire's own demise. A magnificent giant, born too late, sailing into legend through a curtain of fire and water. So, what's the final verdict on this titan? Was she the ultimate weapon held back by cautious commanders? Or a white elephant whose legend outstripped her actual impact? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. A marvel of engineering whose time had already passed the moment she slid into the water. Her story serves as a powerful lesson in naval history, a dramatic final chapter for the age of the battleship. What do you think? Could the Yamato have changed the course of the war if used differently, or was her fate sealed from the start? Let me know your thoughts down below. And if you find these dives into the legends of war compelling, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we've got plenty more steel giants and epic stories waiting to be uncovered.